Hello and welcome to another episode of Journey to the Rise. In today's episode, we talk with Ed Fox, a successful businessman who is not afraid to take a risk or face a challenge. Ed was born and raised in Australia, and his business sense started when he was very young. At 15, he started his own business and rapidly grew it into a six-figure endeavor. Being a young entrepreneur led him down different paths and various challenges, but he always believed in himself and what could be possible. He also shares the success he experienced in his personal life when he met his wife, who he says is the most amazing person in his life. It is a super fun story that I had asked him in advance if he would share, as it is her tenacity and sass that grabbed his attention and led them to a lifelong partnership. Ed relocated to the States to be with his wife, and he goes into the challenges that he faced and the various barriers that he experienced with the English language. Even though his native language is English, there are words in the U.S. that we use that can be confusing to someone who comes from another country. This episode brings you a lively conversation, so let's get started. Please welcome Ed Fox. If you want to feel inspired by someone who is just super positive, uplifting, and very successful as an entrepreneur, this is your guy. I don't know how he even has time to breathe with all that he does with business and all his podcasts, and I can't just wait to dive in. Thank you, Ed, so much for being here today.
Lucretia, thanks for having me. And
of
you know
course.
what? I'll try and live up to what you just said.
I think you will more than live up to it. You are absolutely amazing. And I just want to dive right in. Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in the deep south. Yep, southern hemisphere. So I'm an Aussie. Aussie by birth, American by choice. Okay, that's what I like to say. Born and raised in Australia, met an American girl when I was 22, 1989, at 21, something like that. And then moved over to Wichita, Kansas in 1990 and got married and have lived there for 31 years. And then just recently moved to Bowling Green for a year and then got to move into Franklin, Tennessee. And so we're living in Franklin and loving every minute of it.
Nice.
But I tell people I grew up in Australia, but I got here as quick as I could because I wanted to learn how to say "G'day, y'all."
Right. We all should be saying "G'day, y'all." I like the flow of that. I might be picking it up.
There you go.
What was it like growing up in Australia?
Oh, everybody thinks you got a kangaroo as a pet, and the spiders are the size of your head, and I never saw a spider the size of my head until I got on Facebook in America. That supposedly was from Australia. I don't know. But I have seen spiders the size of my hand. They're like friendly spiders. They're like huntsmen that eat the bugs. They're not poisonous. Of course, I don't want one crawling on my face. But so growing up the biggest thing about Australia that I find different than America is Americans work too dang hard. It's like you're on a stationary bike pedaling harder and harder and harder, trying to go somewhere, and then you stop and take a minute, like what COVID allowed us to do, and we look at the bike and go, this ain't the vehicle that's going to get me where I need to go. So I don't know if that analogy makes sense, but Australians are kind of like laid back and casual. They'll work hard briefly. They'll work hard briefly for a lot of years, but they'll also take the time to have a break and enjoy it. And, so that's been the biggest transition for me, but I love working. I mean, that sounds weird. I'm lazy and I was born lazy and recently had a relapse. My wife hates it when I say that. But I like working hard at helping others because then it's not work, right? If you enjoy what you do, you don't work a day in your life. Like you and I could do a podcast every day and that would never bother us. It could be an 8-hour podcast. Like we would just have fun talking to people and learning from people and just learning new things. So that's what I like to do. So I love America. I love Tennessee. I love Kansas. I love Kentucky. I'd probably prefer to be in this area than on the coasts. But, to each their own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I think Americans do have that. We must work, 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 work. I was just talking to someone a few days ago about how people work their lives until they're 65 and the average age of death is 78. Like they don't leave much time to, and by the time you are 65, you're so broken and tired. It's hard to really enjoy the last few. So yeah, I completely understand that. What kind of kid were you? Like, were you out playing? You said you didn't have a kangaroo, so we squashed that idea.
That's a
But
dog.
like, yeah, were you more of an indoor cat or you an outdoor cat?
Um, I wasn't a cat guy. I like I wasn't a cat guy until I got a cat in. We needed a barn cat because we bought 15 acres. Pardon me, I don't know where that's coming from. And this cat is more like a cat dog. When I walk across the property, the cat follows me, whereas the dog just lays on the porch going, couldn't be bothered. So I was more like that dog. I was like a couldn't be bothered dog. My favorite day in Australia growing up as a kid was lying on my bed reading books. Oh, go outside and play. Mom, I have no one to play with, and I don't want to go outside and play. I want to read a book.
Yeah.
So that was kind of um, my choice. Given the choice, I would rather read books or watch television or go to movies than necessarily play or do physical activities. Although, if you gave me a cricket bat and a cricket ball and we could play a game of cricket, I would play cricket all day long as I had people to play with. So that was my sport of choice. Although I played a bit of rugby. I'm a big guy, so rugby worked for me too. But I always preferred the chess-like strategies of a cricket match as opposed to some of the other sports like tennis or swimming. You know, Australians get a really good reputation for swimming. You know, look at the Olympics. The Aussies are always in there in the mix in the medals, and tennis they're pretty bloody good as well. So, but those for me, give me a game of cricket, I'm all there.
How old were you when you started playing cricket?
Oh, 7. You know, we'd play in the backyard. We'd play sort of like sandlot baseball, right? Just you just need a stick and a few bases to play. Well, cricket's the same thing. You just need a tennis ball and a plank of wood off the back fence, so you can use it as a bat because a cricket bat is flat and wide. So started playing at 7, and then moved over here. Bought a piece of property in 2003 and built my own private cricket field, and hosted about I think 10, 15 years of games. My son went on to
Wow.
play for the US under 15 and 19 teams. Traveled the world doing that, and then went to work for ESPN as a cricket editor. So I've lived vicariously through his cricket career,
Yeah.
and we still play. In fact, this July, end of June, early July, Australia is playing England in the home of cricket. So think of like Yankee Stadium for cricket in England, and so we're going to go over and watch that game over there. That's something that we've always wanted to do, and we just decided that this is the year to do it. So
Nice.
it'll be fun to go together and do that.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I love that. Now, you started pretty early as an entrepreneur. Now, if I remember correctly, you started business with like 80 bucks. How old were you, and can you share that experience with us?
So okay, so I did. I left school at 15. In Australia at the time, you could leave school at 14 and 9 months if you had a job to go to. And I said to my dad, I said, "Oh, Dad, I'll come work for you." He says, "You wouldn't work in an iron lung." I had no idea what an iron lung was. I was thinking like an Iron Maiden, like a torture device, not one of those like ones that help you breathe, right? So I didn't know what an iron lung was. But as a 15-year-old, I thought I knew it all, right? And I said, "Okay, well, fine, I'll start my own business." He's like, "It's going to take money to start a business. How much do you have?" I said, "I got 80 bucks." He said, rolled his eyes. Mum rolled her eyes. And I said, "Okay, fine, I'll show you guys." So I went and talked to this lady who had a convenience store, and her husband had passed, and she lived on a property on the back, and the shop was still there. And so I asked her if I could rent it. She goes, "You're a bit young." I said, "Oh, I got a plan." She goes, "Okay, come on in, have a glass of milk, have a biscuit," which you guys call a cookie, And we talked about my plan of how I'm going to get the milkman. He's going to put milk in on consignment, and we're going to get the baker and put bread on consignment, and I'm going to sell it. And anyway, first year I did $100,000.
What?
1983. $100,000 in 1983 meant something. But, you know, I like to think, you know, I put my hands on my chest and say, oh, I did it all myself. I didn't. Every vendor was an old guy or an older lady, and they all wanted to support this young kid. They all wanted to see him succeed, even in spite of himself, because he was an idiot and he didn't like really working hard, and he didn't really know what to do. But mum and dad helped. I thought they didn't help, but they helped immensely. And so anyway, we grew it to 100,000, and I didn't know how to do taxes. I didn't know how to do any of that. And mum and dad came in and said, look, let us help you. And I'm like, 60-40. And I got the look. I said, okay, 50, fine. And so the next year it was 300,000. Ah, yeah, so Edward was holding it back, not growing it forward. But anyway, we built it up to 300,000. Then I got the idea of putting in video movie rentals. This is 1985, 1986, still fighting with Beta and VHS cassettes. And Dad had a friend that was debt-free, had his own house, was looking to invest. And I talked him into spending $20,000 on video movies and video cassettes. And we did those, and we would rent them out until midnight. So we were the only shop open. And so I worked that because they didn't want to work late. And so after 5 years, we'd built it up to like $500,000 in volume a year. But we were burnt out. And so I moved north to Brisbane, they moved south to Sydney, and we sold the shop. But yeah, so that was an exciting journey to go from nothing to $100,000 by myself, you know, air quotation marks there, because you realize that you don't do anything by yourself. You've got a cast of characters behind you, helping you, pushing you, encouraging you. But you know, I still took the jump. That's really what I'm most proud of. Is a lot of people want to start a business and just never get it done. A lot of people want to start a podcast, Lucretia, and never get it done, right? And so you're taking that step too. So that's exciting for me. Always been a big supporter of people that get off their butt and go do something.
I absolutely love that. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more from our guest, Ed Fox, and he goes into why at times you should be timid when it comes to business and investing. The goal for any business is to grow and reach a new level. Get there faster by being an authority in your industry with a video docu-series. Using video, you can showcase you, your business, your staff, products, services, and your why. Building relationships is key, and a high-quality video can give existing and potential clients a way to get to know you. It also allows you to build a connection that results in increased sales. If you would like to know more about how you can enhance your business with video, please go to girlbossproductions.com today. Welcome back to Journey to the Rise. We continue our conversation with Ed, and we talk about how he got started with Trade Bank and the benefits it brings to business owners. Now, how did you talk someone who's selling milk to do consignment? Like, how did that conversation go over? Were they like, yeah, absolutely, we'll hop on with consignment?
Right. So it was really funny because his name was R.A. Lean, Lean, and he was lean. He was, to me as a 15-year-old, he looked like he was 120. So I don't know. He could have been 45. Who knows? You know, but he was older. He was bald, like the hair tufts on the sides, and he could carry a milk crate, and you'd see those muscles bulge. You know, it wasn't a guy I was going to mess with or rip off either. So I said, "Oh, Mr. Lean, I'm going to open a shop. Would you put milk in there?" He says, "Well, Edward," and patted me on the head. You know, I'm 15, but he pats me on the head, and he says, your mum and dad are always bouncing checks. I said, yeah, well, Dad's been sick. You know, it's hard to pay a big milk bill. There's 5 of us. We, you know, drink and eat and drink a lot of milk, eat a lot of cereal. He says, yeah, I know. He says, I don't mind. You guys always catch up. But he says, I can do that with 2 liters of milk a day, but I can't do that with 100 liters of milk a day. I said, oh, that makes sense. I said, well, what about this? I got the fridge from the Pepsi company. They said I can put milk in the bottom there. I said, what if you put the milk in on Monday? I sell whatever I sell on Monday. The money's in the till, and I pay you that in cash on Tuesday. So I felt like the Popeye, Wimpy's Burger, when he says, I'll gladly pay you for a hamburger. If I can get a hamburger today, I'll gladly pay you on Thursday, right? And he said, okay, let's try that. And so for the first 90 days, I paid for the milk that I sold every day. And he said, oh, this is working out pretty well. I'm happy with this. He says, would you like me to get you the bread guy? And then he got me the orange juice guy, and he got me the lollies, candy, like the single. You used to be able to make a bag of candy for kids, and we call them lollies. And so you do a 20-cent bag, a 10-cent bag, a 50-cent bag, and they put it all in on consignment. The only guys that wouldn't deal with me, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola wanted cash up front. And guess what drinks we didn't have in our shop? No Coca-Cola. So I became a Pepsi guy. So that changed when I had some money coming in. We had to have Coke because, half the audience wants Coke, half the customer base wants Coke, half of it wants Pepsi. So it was just a matter of having a conversation. If you can bring two people together and have a conversation where it benefits both of them, and make a deal that works out, then it's going to happen. And that's what happened.
That's amazing. Absolutely love that. And I love that he was willing to support you and give it a shot and then realize it was being successful and bring others in to go into the same system to help you continue to grow and succeed.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Without that sort of support and willingness to take a risk, I find sometimes people are too risk adverse, and sometimes we just got to put ourselves out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you sell the shop. You said you went to Brisbane. What was next for you after that endeavor?
Well, in Brisbane, I was working duty free. Oh, before I went to Brisbane, I actually got involved in a multi-level called Amway, and had been one of the youngest, most successful builders of Amway in our organization in my part of the country, and put like 800 people in my downline in the first 4 months. And I was a guy that didn't like to stand up in front of people and talk. I know that's hard to believe now, but back in the day, I was the kid in 8th grade that hid in the library because I couldn't talk to anybody. My best friend was a librarian, so she let me hide out there during recess and lunch and stuff. But again, I like reading books. Like, I would devour virtually any type of book. And I read at a lot higher level than my age group. So, as an 8th grader, I'm reading Alistair MacLean and John le Carre, or however you say that, and Ian Fleming, and I'm reading all of this stuff and having a blast. There was no Harry Potter back in the day, although we had Lord of the Rings, but I couldn't get into it. So anyway, so I built an Amway business. I like starting to help people and talk to people and read books, and so now I'm getting educated. Even though I'm not in school, I'm getting a great education through the books, the functions, the audio tapes. Then I moved to Brisbane because I figured there's more opportunity than a little country town with 20,000 people. And I start working at a duty-free store, and so now I'm meeting people from all over the world. And this girl comes in, and she walks up to me, and she's 5'0", and she says, "You've spent so long flirting with those two Kiwi girls that I think you made me miss my bus for dinner, and even if you didn't, you should take me out." I look to the left, I look to the right, and I say, "Well, I've heard of pushy American women, now I've met one." I said, "Why me? I might sound like Mel Gibson, but I sure don't look like him." She goes, "No, you're funny." I said, "Funny peculiar or funny ha-ha?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, I'll take you out." Well, that's turned into a 32-year odyssey. We've been married since 1990, and we met, and we went out a couple of nights later on July 28, 1989. She flew home the next morning. After that, we went all over town. I've got her out to all hours. We're sitting in this old IHOP that's in a church, and we're talking. She's eating food off my plate, which you normally don't get on a first date, right? I said, "Okay." I said, she goes, "Oh, can I have one of your fries?" I said, "They're not fries, they're hot chips." I said, "You're in Australia, not America." And she reached over. I said, "Hang on, what's the deal here?" She goes, "Well, they look good." Okay, fine. So I'm used to the date that pushes the chicken salad around for half an hour, eats 2 bites. And I'm like, this is a Kansas woman. This Kansas woman, she demolished her plate of food. doesn't make her sound good, but it was great to have somebody that could actually sit and eat and have a conversation, and they weren't too worried about whatever, oh, do I have a piece of lettuce stuck in my teeth or something. And so anyway, so we had a great conversation. We talked about what we would want if we were interested in a mate or getting married. She says, I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have kids. I'm just going to work. She just graduated KU as a pharmacist. And I said, oh, well, I'm just going to build businesses. I like helping people and building businesses. Little did we know. 3 kids later and a marriage of 32 years and multiple houses and multiple businesses. And so, yeah. So that's what happened for me in Brisbane. And then in that was July of 89. I came over to Wichita in October of 89. At the end of that month in October, we decided to get engaged. And that's an interesting story for another time. And then went back home, got all the paperwork done, did everything, and we got married came back in January of 90. We got married in February of 90.
Wow.
This year's.
How's come the background?
It doesn't work with the background on this.
See, she's even into your background. She knows. So what was the transition?
She knows.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What was the transition like for you from going from Australia, the life that you knew, to the United States?
The first year. So I say we've been married. We've had a great marriage I've had a great marriage for 31 amazing years. The first year, I must have been the worst husband on the planet. So 1990, there's no internet, there's phone calls are $1.50 a minute back home. Mum's always crying every time I call. And I forget to call. We forget to call our parents. Folks, get on the phone after this. Just stop the podcast, get on the phone, call your mum, tell her you love her. And if you don't have a mum, call your aunt, call a friend, just tell them you love them. Because we forget to do that. My wife was very good. She would say, hey, you haven't called your mum in a while. Yeah, I know, I'll get to it. Another month goes by. We forget how busy we get. Now our kids have moved out the house. I'm like, why don't they ever call? They only call when they want money. So the transition for me was really difficult. None of the food was familiar. The driving wasn't familiar. The customs, the way we did things, were different. The biggest thing for me, I'd go to church and they'd say, oh, we should do lunch sometime. And I said, okay, I'll wait for your call. I was waiting a long bloody time for somebody to call me. So I started carrying a little pocket calendar. And we'd be at church or I'd be out and I'd meet somebody and say, oh, we should do lunch. I said, okay, let's look up. When? They're like, oh, well, look, I'd have to go look at my calendar. And finally, I go home dejected and I tell my wife, I'm like, everybody says they want to do lunch with me, but nobody actually wants to do lunch with me. Do I not use the right deodorant or what? And no, what they're saying is that, hey, they enjoy you as a person. They'd like to be around you. And if you happen to be in the same restaurant at the same time and they're not busy and there's room for you to take a seat, that they would gladly invite you to lunch. It's nothing bad. I said, no. And once I got once we went to smartphones, when was it? 2004, 2007, and you could have your calendar on your phone and you could book appointment. That helped me a lot. So it was just differences, the way we said things, the way we did things. I got in trouble at church one time. My kids are little and they're running around. I said, hey, you kids, stop mucking around. And the little old lady comes up to me and she says, you can't say that at church. I said, what? I said, we're in the Midwest. I said, don't you have stables? Don't you muck out stables? She goes, oh, I thought you said something else. So you guys say messing around, or that in Kansas they say stop messing around. Australians say stop mucking around. We muck out stables too. We've all got horses, and so just words like that, word usage and the way you said things, people would get confused. Alice and I, when we were planning the wedding, I say we were planning the wedding, when she was planning the wedding and I just agreed to whatever she said, we're on the phone. She says, we don't really have money for a big spread. Why don't we just do mince and nuts? I'm like, mince? Like steak tartare? She's like, what? I heard M-I-N-C-E, like hamburger, minced meat. So she's saying MINTS, and I'm hearing MINCE. So I'm like, steak tartare, like raw meat? She goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, are you talking? And then I'm thinking, well, maybe like fig Newtons, like fruit mince, like you mince up the fruit, put it in little tarts. I'm like, okay, oh, that sort of mince. Oh, you mean fruit mince? Well, of course, she heard that I understood fruit candy. So the language was a problem. It still is occasionally a problem. I got up in front of a networking group a couple of weeks ago and I said I wanted an introduction to a person that owned a car yard. And I got a glazed... They all had glazed over eyes. And I said, what did I say? And they said, car yard. I said, well, what do you call it where you sell cars? They go, dealership. I said, no, used cars. They go, oh, that's a car lot. I said, oh, well, that makes sense. There's a lot of cars. And they said, no, that's not what that means. So, you know, the language can mess you up, right? And so that was the biggest thing for me was just like I have friends that speak Spanish and go to Spain, well, Mexican Spanish is different than Spain's Spanish. American English is different to Australian English, is different to British English. My niece is over here from Australia right now, and she's going to school, and she's writing everything, colour, honour, all have O-U-R, right? And she's getting in trouble because the computer's telling her that, no, that's not the way we spell that. She spells mum, M-U-M, not M-O-M. Colonize or whatever, the I-Z-E and the I-S-C is different. So language was the toughest part, making sure I was understood.
Yeah, that would be a big challenge. Yeah, absolutely. What do you miss about Australia besides the Vegemite?
Not a bloody thing.
Really?
Sorry. The food. I mean, the food I grew up on, right? I miss an Australia that doesn't exist anymore. Right? Think about you grew up Wisconsin, Michigan?
Wisconsin.
Okay.
Northwest Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Okay. So does that make you a cheesehead or something?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. See, I know some things. I'm learning. It's only taken me 30 years. But when you go home, you left for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Were you gone for 10 years or so? More?
I've been in Nashville for at least 14, so yeah, it's been a while.
Okay. But you've gone home to visit or haven't gone home to visit?
Haven't been there in like 5-6 years.
Okay. See how I turned the tables on you and turned you into the interviewer instead of the interviewer? But so Australia, when I go home to Australia, it's not the same place. The recipes for the food, the fish and chips are a bit different. All my favorite desserts are a bit different because now we have a lot more Asian influence and they're cooking it a different way. And so, you know, you can't go back. You can't go back. But other than friends and family, and it's kind of weird because I go back I try to visit every 4, 5, 6 years when COVID's not in the mix. But, and you just see the kids, you know, you see them as a baby, and then you see them as 6-year-olds, and then you see them as 12-year-olds, and then they're adults, you know. And so it's just difficult to go back, and we grow differently. Living in Tennessee or the free states of the Midwest, it gives you a lot different mindset than living in a very controlled environment like Australia is. Now, some Australians would say to me, Australia's not that controlled. Oh, yes, it is. They don't know. It's sort of like a frog in a warm, on the stove in a saucepan of water, and the water's heating up. They don't know that it's getting hotter. They burn to death because they don't know to jump out. Well, Australia to me is a bit like that. And people would say, well, Edward, that's just your conspiracy theory mindset or whatever. I don't care. I like being free. I like having those freedoms that Tennessee allows us to have, that Australia doesn't.
Yeah, that would definitely... Yeah, I totally understand that. And when you do go back, it is different. And it's not how you remember it, and things are different. And yeah, the mindset is, you know, stuck here and there. So I totally, completely understand that. So you're in Kansas, and you're adapting. But how did you end up in Bowling Green and Tennessee area? Like, how did that transition for you?
So I've always, as we talked about, always been an entrepreneur. I talked yesterday to a group of people about timidity. Timidity, is that the way to say it? Being timid in starting a business, right? There is a time to be timid. Oh, if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, Edward, we're getting a bunch of investors together and we're investing $20 million in a business," I'm like, "Ha, you got the wrong guy, dude. Like, I can't scrape together $1 million, without liquidating everything. So you need to go talk to somebody else because I got no money." But I talked to them about the fact that when you build a business, you have to look at that. If you're trying to start a business and it's going to take you $4 million to start, that's a business that you've got to be timid about and have all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed. But if you're going to jumpstart a business in your local area that's a pooper scooper, a dog walker, a copywriter, a window cleaner, those don't take a lot of expenses. Jump in and do it as your side hustle and see if it works. What do you got to lose? So don't be timid when it comes to starting a business, unless you've got so much on the line that if you put it all on the line and you lost it, your life would have to start over, which is okay because that happens too, right? We look at KFC and Colonel Sanders. He lost everything when the highway moved and his chicken restaurant had to close down, so he goes door to door selling the recipe. It worked out okay. So my point is, when I got here, I was not timid about starting businesses. One of my favorites was, there used to be, did you have the Thrifty Nickel here, Lucretia, or some sort of trading post?
I don't remember a Thrifty Nickel.
Right. So we called it Penny Power in Wichita, and you could put a free classified ad in there. And so I worked at Sears at the time, and I would buy all their returns and sell them through the Penny Power. And I made great money doing that, and it didn't really cost me anything. I'd buy 4 of the same camcorder that they bought from Sears. Sears was notorious at taking anything back, and so people would buy it for graduation, go record a video of their kid getting their diploma, and then they'd bring it back to us. And you'd mark it down $200 and you'd flog it off. So I would buy them at the $200 off plus my employee discount. I'd have 4 of them. I'd go put in the Penny Power saying, "One barely used video camcorder. Normally $900 on. You can have it for $600. I paid $400 for it. I have 4 of them. But they don't know I've got 4. So I call up. "You still got that camcorder?" "Oh, yeah, I got a couple of people looking at it, mate, but I can help you out." They would come and buy that camcorder. And so my wife's like, "What are you bringing home 4 camcorders for? What do you got 11 VCRs for? What do you got 14 TVs for?" And I sold them all within like 2 nights of buying them. And so I love doing that sort of stuff. And then I bought Pokemon cards, and I set up at the flea market, and I sold a bunch of Pokemon cards. Then I started doing tournaments. We made $100,000 a year doing Pokemon and Magic the Gathering tournaments.
What?
And that was a good run. We did that for... I'm sorry, IRS is listening. We made no money whatsoever. $0. We made no dollars. We would drive down to Dallas. We would book out a hotel. We'd have 1,000 kids show up. This happened every couple of years, and they would drop $30. So that's $30,000. You'd have about $10,000 in cost. You'd walk away with $20,000. And you do 4 or 5 of those a year, or you do smaller ones where you made about $5,000 an event. Now, you spent most of it on doing cool stuff with your kids, so like while we're down in Dallas, we go to Six Flags, we do that stuff. But you got bricks of cash. We were dealing legal crack by dealing Pokemon cards, and we called it Pokey Crack or something like that, because you would sell a pack of Pokemon cards, they would build a deck, they would play, and then they'd come back, "Mister, and the person saying Mister could be 7 or 70. It didn't matter. We had the whole age group. I love doing that, and all my kids grew up playing those sort of trading card games and stuff. And so I've always fallen into these businesses that have made good money, because once you take care of the customer and you give the customer a good experience, they love it. And so anyway, it's just a progression of considerably larger businesses until I bought 6 franchises of the Coffee News, which was a cheap advertising franchise in Wichita. That led me to buy a Trade Bank franchise in Wichita. We built that up to number 2 in the nation. And so that takes us up to 2020. COVID hits. Some people think it's the zombie apocalypse, it's the end of the world, whatever. It's just another thing we're dealing with. And so I try to help the Nashville guy who owned Trade Bank understand how to use social media, how to use the tools that were out there to do meetings, like using Zoom and Skype and that sort of stuff. And it just wasn't for him. He wasn't a technological guy. And so I ended up buying Trade Bank of Nashville at a very discounted price because the business had fallen off because of COVID. And so Trade Bank is a business-to-business barter exchange that is a platform that we use an app for that allows businesses to barter their excess time or their excess product, or just to get new customers that they would never otherwise see, because nobody likes to pay full price, right? So if you're a business owner and you've got bottles of water, and I could swap bottles of water for hot dogs, would that be better if you're hungry and you want a hot dog and you give them a bottle of water? Would it be better to give them the bottle of water, or would it be better to give them cash out of the pocket?
The bottle of
water. Well, the bottle of water costs you 50 cents a dollar. Right. So knowing your cost of goods sold as a business owner and trading either your time or your product for things you want without spending cash, man, that saves you thousands. You still got to declare it to the IRS, still pay your taxes on it. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, pay your taxes on it. I'm not suggesting that you should circumvent that. But this platform, this Trade Bank platform, helped my business grow when I was selling advertising. So I bought the franchises for Wichita, bought Nashville. My wife was working for Walgreens at the time. We got transferred to Bowling Green. They wouldn't transfer into Nashville. They said, "I'll give us a year in Bowling Green." Well, they put her an hour north of Bowling Green. That was tough. So I'm driving to the office in Goodlettsville, living in Bowling Green. She's living in Bowling Green with me, thankfully, and she's driving an hour north to Litchfield, Kentucky. And after a year of that, I said, "This is for the birds. This is crazy. Like, we're not even heading in the same direction." And you know how busy 65 is. Like, one of us is going to cark it. That means, like, get run over or something, And so she asked for a transfer. They say no. So she looks for other opportunities. God was amazing. We found a place down in Franklin. We signed the lease. She had left Walgreens. And then somebody from Kroger calls her and says, "You put in an application for Murfreesboro and Thompson Station, but we need somebody at the Franklin store. Would you be interested in interviewing for that?"
No
Thank
way.
you, God. Yeah, it's funny when you open the door, or when you let God open the doors and you're open to opportunity. If we're on the lookout, God will provide. Not in our time, in His time. Okay? People forget that. "Oh, God's put me through this for 20 years. Yeah, because you need to grow. I'm good at building $1 million business. I can build $1 million business. I can't build a $5 million business. I don't want to work that hard. Right?
Right.
I don't. I would rather help people and charge them nothing. No, I want to charge them millions, but no. I give away my services way too often because people matter more to me than money. Now, my wife probably wishes sometimes I could be more motivated by money, but I'm motivated by helping people. If I can cover the bills and live the life I want to live. But that, for us, takes 100, 150,000. I remember the days I didn't have 2,000. I remember surviving on $50 a month. So it's not money. It's not money that motivates me. It's people. It's helping people. And so with this Trade Bank, here's a way that a small business can trade for services and things they need. I've got a hairdresser in Wichita, and she got on Trade Bank, and she's able to turn a cut and a color, which is about $200, $180, $200. She's able to turn that into things that her kids can do. Go play in arcades, go out to eat, go on vacations, and she's not taking cash out of her pocket to do it. She loves Trade Bank. And when I can help businesses understand that and do that, and the fact that there's barter networks all over the country that they don't even know exists, people don't consider barter as part of their way of generating revenue, but they should. it's been around. It was the first form of monetary exchange was barter. And so it's still worthwhile looking at being piece of the puzzle. People say, oh, yeah, but, my landlord needs cash. Well, yeah, then have enough cash customers. You want to make a lot of cash, but when you've got downtime, why not take trade? So I got into that franchise, and I'm building 2 franchises. One in Wichita, one in Nashville, always looking for help. I've decided to sell off some areas, actually, or partner with some people. So if you know anybody in, like, Rutherford County, Wilson... I would up. What's the one that Goodlettsville, Hendersonville? What counties are
There's
those?
Sumner,
whatever it is, anyway.
Sumner, Robertson.
Sumner. Right. So what I'm thinking of doing is if I've put up the money, if somebody else needs an opportunity, they can partner with me for a few grand and take 50% of all the revenue. Because 2 million people across Nashville is just too big. Well, I'm never going to get to Goodlettsville and Lebanon on a consistent basis. So I need somebody out there. I'm never going to get to Dixon on a consistent basis. I'm never going to get to, is it Cheatham County, on a consistent basis. Me, it's going to be Williamson County, and then maybe over towards Murfreesboro, and then down towards Columbia, Spring Hill, Thompson Station. And so if there's people out there that end up listening to this podcast and they are looking for an opportunity but nobody will give them one, then they should reach out.
And I think that's a big reason why you're successful is because you do put people first. No, go ahead.
I just thought, my kids, who said they were never going to have a business of their own, just decided to buy an ice cream shop up in Columbus, north of Columbus, Ohio. It's been around since 1954. It's one you'd be familiar. It's that walk-up one. There's no seating. There's nothing. You just walk up during the summer, buy your ice cream cone, and go. And this place has been around since 1954. And so my kids are like, hey, Dad, you want to go halvesies? Yeah, what's that mean? Oh, Dad, can you co-sign the SBA loan? Talk to your mother. Talk to your mother. If she says yes, I'm in. Well, we just bought 50% of an ice cream shop.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. And then I'm sitting in a barbecue restaurant up in Goodlettsville, and the barbecue's really, really good. Actually, I'm sitting at a table outside because they don't have inside seating. And I asked the guy, I said, if you ever need a partner, let me know because I love this. I don't know how to cook it, but I love it, and I'll come in as your partner. Well, he hits me up, and so we just bought 49% of JoJo's Barbecue in Goodlettsville.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
So I got an ice cream shop, which I don't need as a diabetic, so that's great that it's so far away. And we're going up there. Actually, as soon as I finish this, we're jumping in the car and we're off. We're going up there today to look at the building and stuff. And then the barbecue place, if I stay away from the sauces, I'll be good as a diabetic. But anyway, so JoJo's Barbecues. The sauces are going to be in Kroger, Dollar General, and Cracker Barrel at some point. We hope that deal is in the works, and then I'm growing Trade Bank, so that's cool. So anybody that wants to talk business, I'll get on a Zoom and talk business with them. Or if they want to buy me a coffee, we can go to Just Love Coffee. I love that place. Is
that your favorite coffee shop in Nashville?
So far, it's been the most accommodating to my loudness. And they ask me for a dad joke every time I go in. So
perfect.
I have this little video name that says, ask me for a dad joke. And so I've got a TikTok channel that I've got a couple of or just over 1,500 followers. And I've done about 369 videos. 369. Now, they're only one dad joke at a time, but it's pretty fun.
You want to
hear
expert.
My dad joke for today?
I do, yes. You're an expert at dad jokes, so we must absolutely have one.
Did you hear about the old man that fell down the well?
I didn't. What happened?
He didn't see that well. That works on 2 levels, right? You ever raise chickens?
Yes.
Right. You ever raise chickens? So
yeah.
What do you call a chicken coop? What do you call a chicken coop with 4 doors?
I don't know.
A chicken sedan. Do you hear about the Norwegian Navy? They're putting barcodes on all the warships. So when they come back into the Ford, they come back into port, they can Scandinavian. Scandinavian. I had a lady tell me that She didn't understand what Scandinavian meant. I said, you know, Scan. She goes, yeah, but how is that funny? I said, Scandinavia, Norway. She's like,
She didn't get it.
Norway, Europe. She didn't know what Scandinavia was. I'm like, okay, I'm a ninth grade dropout here that started my first business at 15. You look like she's driving an Escalade. She's well polished. She's got pearls. She's probably highly educated trophy wife, but she's probably gone to college, right, to find the husband. She's not dumb. She's not a blonde. She was brunette. And she didn't know what Scandinavia was. I said, is it my accent? I said, Sweden, Denmark. I'm trying to think of all these countries, and now I'm coming up, Norway, like, I don't know, is Luxembourg? I don't know. Anyway, so I'm trying to think of all these, Finland, I'm trying to think of all these Scandinavian countries, Sweden. And she didn't know what Scandinavia was. She goes, they're all European countries. So anyway, so that was almost funnier than the joke I told, but the joke is very funny. So between telling dad jokes and talking to people about starting businesses, I just love that entrepreneurial journey, and I want people to understand you can start a business with no money. You can start a business with no money. You can start a business with a little bit of money. You can start a business with a lot of money. How do you make a small fortune in the restaurant business? Start with a large one.
Yeah.
Restaurants are for everybody. They're not for me. I just want to be an investor in the restaurant and keep it simple. But you can lose your shirt in restaurants. So just understand that. Right. But if if it's 1,000. So I always look at it this way, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier. If you go to start a business, you're a photographer, right, Lucretia? Mm-hmm. You write and you take photos. You have what costs you more? Being able to write or being able to take photos?
Initially, take photos because you need the camera.
Right, because you can write on a notepad, right? You can get started. Now, it's good to have a notebook or whatever. But shoot, you can buy I bought a Chromebook on Amazon the other day for $88. And then I go into Google Drive, and it's got this cool tool. So I've written 2 dad joke books that are on Amazon, or I've compiled 2 dad joke books. But I love the fact I can go into Google Drive, I can hit voice recording on a document, and it'll just write what I say, and then I just go and edit it. So you don't need a lot of money to be a writer, right? You need some skills, but you don't need a lot of money. But to be a photographer, to be a good photographer, you could be the most skilled person in the world, but if you don't have a camera... Now, I know some of us think we're the best photographers ever with our iPhones and Androids, and quite honestly, the lens on my Android is way better than my Pentax 1000 from back in the day.
They've come a long way.
My point is that it takes several, even the cost of the phone. Let's call a phone $1,500. A camera is probably less than that for a portrait lens and a closer and a regular 50mm lens. You can probably get the whole kit for $800. But businesses that we want to start can be as minimum as that or less, or they could take a lot more investment. But don't be afraid to get started. Try something out. And if you need any tips on how to start a business, folks, without spending a lot of money, Google best cheap businesses to start. Great business ideas that don't cost you a lot of money. I mean, Google's your friend. It'll tell you a lot of stuff. And you can start businesses tomorrow. A lot of affiliate programs, So I like talking to people that are interested in being entrepreneurs. And I like talking to people that have interesting stories.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. How do you stay so upbeat? Do you ever struggle with feeling down or getting into a funk?
Oh my, do I. So the last 3 weeks, I have slept most of the last 3 weeks. Couldn't figure out why I had no energy, and I thought, maybe it's just depression. And I've dealt with depression since I was a kid. My grandmother and my mother both dealt strongly with depression, and I take after them a lot. They both also had aortic aneurysms, which I also had. And so dealing with depression, a lot of times you just gotta, when you finally drag your butt out of bed and you open up the window and you understand that sunlight helps. Just get out in the sun, even if you don't feel like it. the biggest thing for me, and that's where I got into the dad jokes, the biggest thing for me to help with depression is I started just reading joke books. Because somebody had told me, they gave me a Reader's Digest and they opened it up to like laughter's the best medicine. They're like, oh, how you doing, Edward? Oh, I'm feeling down. You're 14 years old. What do you got to feel down about? Well, I'm a fat kid at school none of the girls like. That's enough to feel bad about, isn't it? You know, I get picked on at school because of my size. You know, that's why I left school and started a business. Those same girls that wouldn't talk to me would come in and try and buy cigarettes. Oh, Edward, hook us up. No, piss off. You know? And then they became friends because they finally... I said, why did you pick on me at school? They're like, well, because if we didn't pick on you, people would pick on us. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So you understand, everybody's dealing with different things. And those folks that go through life without having downs or funks or depressions... more power to them, but that's not me. If you looked at my chart is like this. You know, it's just ups and downs and then rounds and rounds, and you know, you just it is what it is. Everybody's journey is different. The struggles that you and I have are going to be different. Sometimes they might overlap. The struggles that other people have might be totally different. I remember the most gorgeous girl in school, and she came into my shop after I opened my shop, and I said, you're the most gorgeous girl in school, and because she told me she wasn't happy in school. I said, why weren't you happy? She goes, I couldn't get a date. Nobody would date me. They were all afraid to talk to me. You know, then you talk to the kid with the glasses, you talk to the kid with the buck teeth, the kid with the pimples, the fat kid. We all had our own challenges, you know, and so we're all going to deal with this. And for me, in my life, I'm married to the most wonderful wife in the world. I've got a good support structure. I'm not a fan of pills. That doesn't mean that pills can't do the job, right? But for me personally, we're just talking me personally. I've got kids. Some of those kids use medication to deal with the same things that I've dealt with without medication. Although Vegemite and candy is kind of a medication. Who doesn't like a chocolate milkshake when you're feeling down? So maybe I was medicating in my own way. So for me, sometimes you just got to put a foot in front of the other. And there's those days that you have to lay down and pull up the covers and turn off the lights and lock the door and turn off the phone and just be miserable. If that's what you need to do, just don't stay there too long, right? Understand, yeah, you can wallow like I do for a day or two. Like the 3 weeks, it turns out that my meds were off. And once I got my meds fixed for my blood pressure, all my energy came back. So sometimes make sure it's not a chemical imbalance that can be solved with another chemical. Or, you know, I'm not a professional. I didn't play one on TV. But I do deal with depression in my own way. And that's where I use humor. So humor for me is if you're feeling down, and I get a bit self-conscious, like if my wife's in the house, I probably don't do this. But if I'm feeling down, one of the great things I do is I just start laughing. Ha, ha, ha. But try and get a belly laugh going. When I do that, even though I don't want to feel good, the hairs stand up, the blood... I don't know, there's probably technical terms for that. But for me, that's one of the ways I combat the funk. And the funk happens often. You know what? It's just, what is that? Hello, darkness, my old friend. I'm not a singer,
Yeah.
but you know, I think of that line that he's always on my shoulder. He's always on my shoulder saying, oh, let me in, let me in, let me in. You're not worthy. You know, the imposter syndrome, all of that sort of stuff. But if you're genuine, you're authentic. To me, authenticity is key. I'm writing a book called Be Authentic Unless You're a Serial Killer. Then don't be that, change. Because really,
I love that title.
It's really, thanks. It's meant to convey be authentic unless you're a jerk or an asshole. Don't be that, change, right? Because we can all be that. We can all be a jerk. But we know, you and I know, sitting right here, whether we're serial killers or not. We know that, right? So don't be that. Be authentic, but change if you need to. And so people go, oh, if you can't accept me for the way I am. No, I'm talking about from a business perspective, you need to change. And if you're not going to change, then you're not going to get the customers you need to see. You're going to get a certain type of customer that puts up with your BS. but you're not going to get the other customers that refuse to put up with your BS. So the only one that can change that BS is you, right? So if you give bad customer service and you're snarky at the cash register and that drives away customers, then don't be a serial killer. Change. Be authentic. Be the best authentic person you can be and change the parts that don't work in the business. You don't have to be fake. And so that, for me, works in life because I find I come across as a genuine individual. But that takes work. To be genuine, to be vulnerable, to talk about the things. How many people go around talking about how wonderful their spouse is? That doesn't happen enough. They might think it, but then when they get in a group of people, they've got to tear them down. They've got to say bad things about them to be in the same company that says that sort of stuff. I refuse to do that. Married to the most wonderful wife in the world, and that's trademark. And she is, I tell people, she's the second best thing that ever happened to me.
Aw, I love that. What's the first?
When I became a Christian. When I got saved, which she had a lot to do with too, because I came over here not a Christian. So she had a part, I tell the story. God looked all over the world for somebody that would get me on the straight and narrow. And he looked all over Australia, all over New Zealand, all over all the other places, and then he found this little girl in Kansas that liked koalas, and she wanted to go to Australia. So he's like, "Oh, I'll bring those two together, and she's strong enough. She'll work him out." It's worked out pretty good for me.
That's awesome. I can't wait for your book. That's really exciting.
I'm so excited about it.
You need to keep me posted on that because I'll definitely be getting myself a couple copies. You have a lot of podcasts. How many podcasts do you have? How have you decided to start them? And what are they all? And I don't even know how you keep up with them. I was trying to listen to them all, and I'm like, there's a lot of content here. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, so most podcasts only get to 7 episodes, is what I was told. And I said, well, I'm not going to get to 7 episodes. But it seems like anything I do with a co-host, we're only about 10 episodes. Anything I do myself, I like Nashville 2, I think I'm at 30 episodes, maybe. And I'm doing video and audio. It only happens because of a team. I started doing it myself, and then I was able to use some barter dollars to get somebody to edit them for me. But they weren't editing the way, it didn't have my flavor. They kept cutting out stuff where I stuffed up, where I made mistakes. Well, I wanted to show people authentic. They weren't bad mistakes. I wasn't dropping F-bombs or stuff, whatever. But I was being authentic. And so I then my daughter said, "Hey, Dad, I'll help you if you'll pay me some cash and some trade dollars." I said, "Okay, great." So she's helping me with Nashville 2. So I started Nashville 2, Nashville2.com is your Nashville 2, let's tell your story. So I wanted a way that I could meet interesting people in Nashville and then have them come onto Zoom during COVID and tell their story. And then we put it out as a podcast. And if I could promote them, then I am doing what my goal is, which is adding value to them. Right? So I've had some great guests on. Craig Alexander, who did the ghost town of Broadway during COVID, where he gets a picture of Broadway with nothing on it. So I had Craig Alexander come on, and he was a fantabulous guest. He was fantastic. In fact, every guest I've had on has had some interesting information. Michael Morrow, guy that teaches credit restoration, was excellent. Bob, I can't think of his last name. He's a county commissioner now in the Franklin area. Ravner, I think. Dean Wegner, that owns Authentically American, USA-made apparel right here in Franklin, Tennessee. He was great. Q-Up Style, Marie Quinn. She was fantastic. So Janet Truman from SVO. Anyway, sorry, I could just reel off the list. But every one of them has been interesting. All in industries I don't know anything about. So I started Nashville 2. That's going well. And that's really, they come on, they talk about their business, what they love about the Nashville area, if they were born and raised here or if they moved here. And then they have 3 hidden gems, 3 things they love about the area. Because we get a lot of listeners outside because I have a lot of contacts across the country and across the world. And then we get a lot of listeners locally because of SEO and stuff. So that's Nashville too. So what I did is I blocked out Tuesday to record my podcast. So Tuesday I have 10, 10:30, 11, 11:30, 12, 12:30, 1, 1:30. And so I have 5 different podcasts, Nashville2.com, Bada Bing, Bada Boom, where we interview trade bank members to talk about their experience doing barter. I was watching Sopranos and he goes, Bada Bing, Bada Boom. And I'm like, oh, Barter Bing, Barter Boom. That'll work. With my co-host Lisa out of the Huntsville Trade Bank. I have the Wake Up Call with Ed and Paul, guy I met on a mastermind group, insurance guy for 40 years out in New York. Him and I just rag on each other and have a guest occasionally interject with some information. That's kind of fun. What else? I'm forgetting. Oh, Wichita Wow is one that I haven't started, but it's going to be the same way as Nashville because I had 30 years in Wichita. A lot of my Wichita friends are like, I want to be on your podcast. Can't I do the Wichita pod? Why don't you have a Wichita? Don't you love Wichita? So I do love Wichita. It is a hidden gem in and of itself in the prairies of Kansas. I say Wichita, people go, Wichita Falls? No, not Texas. Wichita, Kansas. It's a great little town. It's about 500,000 people, and it's 3 hours from Kansas City, 3 hours from Oklahoma City, 8 hours from Denver. So we're going to do stories on that. And then I have The Edward Show. And The Edward Show is a global podcast. Anybody that interests me that's outside of those other areas, I'll have on The Edward Show.
I love it. That's
that sounds
amazing.
like a lot.
It does sound
It's
like
a
a lot.
lot.
It is. It is. No wonder you do it all in one day, because otherwise it would be impossible to get done.
Just from guest to guest to guest, and my editing stays minimal, and I use a great platform to just upload video and audio, and I put it all on YouTube as well. So
Nice. That's awesome. Why do you think you're so inspired by business? You've been very successful throughout your entire life. Do you think it comes down to the people, or what's the magic potion here?
Well, I would argue, if you know a good photographer, you and I have talked about this before, one of the things that makes a great photographer is the ability to throw away the trash. Right? Whereas Grandma snaps a shot with a finger over the lens or it out of focus, she wants to keep that because, oh, that's little Johnny, you can just make him out in the background. You know? Whereas those of us that have taken photos professionally or put a lot of effort into our photos, our best job is as an editor. You take 100 photos, 94 of them never see the light of day, right? Because now you've just got the best. Well, I've had my failures as well, but I've always told my kids, make a decision and make it right. So if you make a decision and you run towards that decision at 100 miles an hour, and you find out some more information, you can start to change direction because you're moving fast enough to make it happen. If you are sitting on your stool still waiting for inspiration or still waiting for the fear to go away to get started on something, you're never going to find that additional information. So we make mistakes all the time. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's how you get educated. Just don't make mistakes that can kill you. Right?
Right.
What's the old thing? Don't fail at skydiving. There's a way that's said, and I can't remember the way it's said. You know, if you something about if your chute doesn't open, or I don't know, or you know what I'm saying is
Right.
You know, there's some things you stay away from, but don't, if it's not going to kill you, you know, I'm not saying grab a hold of live wires and put them in your mouth, right? I'm not saying do that. I'm saying, you know, hey, learn how to do a class on how to do basic home repair. Don't be afraid to tackle it, right? Don't be afraid to try something new. And so for me, what inspired me is my grandmother was one of the top 10 Tupperware dealers in Australia. We're not talking about this little Tupperware lady that goes out and does a Tupperware party and sells, you know, $50 worth of stuff. This is a lady that had 5 acres, 4 garages full of Tupperware, had hundreds of people in their Tupperware dealership, and was one of the top 10 Tupperware dealers in Australia in the 70s. And I said, when I grow up, I want to be a business owner like you, Nan. Every aunt and uncle from her and Grandpa, my Uncle John, my Uncle Paul, my Aunt Judy, my Aunt Lindy, who am I forgetting? If I miss any, I'm in trouble. My mum, Paul, John, Judy. Anyway, they all had businesses. Oh, and then on my dad's side, he was one of 6. They all had businesses. And so everywhere I went was a person running a business. Now, it might have been a side business, or it might have been my favorite business of all time, used bookstore. But you could probably put that together with my love of books already. Never make any money because you barter, right? You'll trade. Like you bring in your old books, you trade them, plus you give me 10 cents on every book you want to take out, So we would get lots and lots of books. And I would love to just sit there and read the books, right? Because I couldn't afford American comics, but I could read them. Always wanted like the Battlestar Galactica helmet and the jacket in the back of the 70s comics and the Foot Locker full of army men for $1.99. The submarine. I wanted a submarine. There's a cardboard submarine I find out years later. It wouldn't have lasted well. But so I like the idea of these starting businesses and building businesses. Well, yeah, I'm off on 57 different tangents, as you can see. How do I keep it all together? People go, how do you keep all the plates in the air? You don't. You spin the plates that are important to you. The ones that can be packed up and put away for a while, you take the plate down, you lay the rod down, you lay the plate down, you work on the ones, you focus where you need to focus. Sometimes it's family, sometimes it's business, sometimes it's health, right? You focus where you need to focus, but don't be afraid to spin an extra plate. What's the worst that can happen? It falls, it breaks. You go to Dollar Tree, you buy another one. $1.25 these days. So don't be afraid to spin plates. Not all of them are going to survive. Not all of them are going to grow. But don't be timid. If it costs you virtually nothing to start the business, if you can throw $100 at it and help a friend start a business and they lose that $100, if that's going to really, really hurt you, then don't give them the $100. So for me, I've had levels where giving somebody $10 would have killed me. Like I didn't have $10, right? And then over the years, I've had times where I could give him $1,000. I gave this kid $1,000 for a video camera. He wanted to start blogging and stuff before it was really a thing. 3 years later, I say, hey, am I ever going to get my $1,000 back? Oh, I had to sell the camera to fix my car. Well, yeah, but how does that affect me not getting my $1,000 back? Oh, well, I don't have the camera anymore. Although I gave you $1,000 to buy the camera, it's still given $1,000 just because you don't have the camera. So, sometimes you give money away to build an investment and it doesn't work out. So that's one of those that didn't work out. I gave another kid $300 and that's turned into like $15,000 in revenue so far. So, it's not a lot of money, but it's kind of cool, So businesses that you can start and helping people out, if you've got to put $100,000 into it and that's going to hurt you, then don't do it. If you can put $100,000 into it and it really is a drop in the bucket for your level, then help someone out and start a business. Who knows? Who knows what that's going to turn into, right? If that's an opportunity to build $1 billion business for $100,000, you're going to be happy. If you got an opportunity to build a $50,000 business for $1,000, you're going to be happy. So that for me, I love that whole entrepreneurial family that I grew up in. The people that amaze me most are people that didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family that start a business. They just astound me. I want to talk to them all day long about how did you go from being an academic or a person that grew up with parents that taught to wanting to start your own business. That book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've read it a couple times.
Right, yeah, it'll change your life or at least make you think about things differently. You might not even agree with him. Is the house an asset or a liability? It's definitely a liability, but other people think otherwise. So did I answer your question?
You did, yeah, absolutely. So I love talking to you. You're just so much information and you're just so motivational and uplifting and real. You're very, very real and authentic, and I cannot wait for this book. Seriously, keep me posted. If you need a 6th podcast added to your very busy to-do list, let me know. I know, I'm just saying, we could have a lot of fun doing one. If someone is listening and they're like, man, this trade bank, I need to know more about it, or they want to find out about your podcast, like, where can they find you, and how can they, like, sign up and just get more information?
If they're familiar with Linktree, linktr.ee/AussieFox, and that's AussieFox. But quite honestly, if you put Edward Fox Nashville, Edward Fox Cricket, Edward Fox TikTok, EDWARDFOX, or Ed Fox TikTok, I'm all over LinkedIn, Facebook, all the platforms, all the interwebs. You can find me. And if not, they can reach out to you, and you can feel free to give anybody my phone number, even telemarketers. Folks, if you've got my phone number and you're listening to this, give it to telemarketers. I love talking to telemarketers. It's the best thing ever. You should try it, Lucretia. It's fun. You just go, oh yeah, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Yeah. You get them all excited and say, okay, I'm a barter company. How do we make that happen? How do we barter? And they're like, what? I've not got one converted yet, but, one day.
One day. You never know.
That's right.
Well, I know you have a road trip ahead of you. I can't wait to try that barbecue place we talked about. And if I'm ever going through that area of Ohio, I'm going to be swinging into that ice cream shop. I just appreciate you so much, and I appreciate how willing you are to take a risk and encourage others to pursue that risk, because it could lead to an amazing life.
Well, exactly. And Alice took a risk on me. Who knew? She looked at this guy, this scruffy little guy, and said, oh, yeah, I'll spend the rest of my life with him. So she took a risk on me. So, yeah, take a risk, people. Take a risk today. Go out and meet someone new. Send somebody a half birthday card, wishing them a happy half birthday. Don't do that every day.
Nope.
Thanks, Lucretia. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Yes, thank you. That's it with Ed Fox, the Trade Bank. Next week, we talk with health coach Tanner Scott.
And the crazy thing, looking back now, is this doctor didn't say, hey, let's figure out what's causing this inflammation and fix that. He just said, hey, here's a pill. Take these steroids for a week, and then after that, take one of these pills every day. It should handle everything. And so I did that, and 6 months later, I was still having issues. And so that was kind of the point where I was like, I need to reevaluate things. I need to figure out what is going on here, because I was 28 years old, something like that at the time. I was like, I just cannot imagine living my life in this state for forever. Like, I shouldn't be feeling this way as a 28-year-old, because I wasn't able to do anything active. I was suddenly like on the...
Hey, thanks for listening to Journey to the Rise. Please do follow us on your podcast app so you have the latest episode downloaded. If you want to follow us on Instagram, our account is at Journey to the Rise Podcast. This episode was researched, produced, and edited by Girl Boss Productions. I'm Lucretia, and you've been listening to Journey to the Rise.